What is up, guys? Rysum here, and welcome back to Space Engineers. Now, in today's episode, I've replicated a ship straight out of the Star Wars universe. This is, of course, the ATTE, also known as the All-Terrain Tactical Enforcer. This is a Republic ship that was used during the Clone Wars as both a troop transport and a ground assault vehicle. Okay, now, I attempted to replicate this in-game after being inspired to build ships from the Star Wars universe by my friend Purrfect Blinky. A link to his channel will be on screen right now and in the description below. He makes pretty much all of the best models and replicas of Star Wars ships in Space Engineers, and they're all on the Steam Workshop and on his channel, so I highly recommend you go check him out. Now let's hop straight into this build. I tried to replicate the actual craft as best as I could, although there are some issues that I ran into, and I'll talk about those at the very end of the video. Now, there are, like I said, there's some issues, so this isn't 100% perfect replica. Anyways, let's start off at the front here. At the front of the walker is the cockpit for the two drivers. Believe it or not, there's actually another driver that's behind this one. We can pop in here, and as you can see, we've got access to all of our controls. Pop right back out, and you can see we've got 4 gatling guns on the front. Now, on the actual walker, these 4 gatling turrets are actually like sentry guns, or turrets that are controlled by gunners that are located on the inside of the ship, and I'll be showing that off in a little bit just as well. Now, of course, in the actual thing, they're supposed to pivot around, so the gunner's supposed to control them, but that is not really possible. I'd love to have used the turrets for the small ships, but you see, they're just much too big to actually fit that part. And if we come around to the back side, you can see we've got 2 more of the same spherical turrets. You can see this craft has 6 individual legs, each having 3 moving parts to them. These were extremely annoying to actually hook up and get functioning and everything, and this particular model does not function. However, I tried to make it function as much as possible. Initially, I started out with something like this, which was a test rig for the legs to make sure everything would function, and if I press the button here, you can see that it actually functions quite well. The legs move perfectly and the ship actually inches forward. It's pretty funny actually, but if I can just hit this before we destroy my model here. Okay, so I built that first, and I'm like, alright, well, let's start building the chassis on top of it. And as I started adding on more and more blocks, the ship slowly got heavier, and it eventually did not function. And I'll show you what it does when I actually turn on the legs at the very end of the video. So I tried to replicate it, like I said, as best as I could, but the center or the middle legs on either side here aren't accurate 100%. Instead of having 3 joints like it has here, it's supposed to only have 2, and the center joint should be pivoted back and forth by these 2 pistons. Although I scrapped that idea having tried putting that all together, but it didn't work in Space Engineers, so I decided to scrap that and put something more usable in. So this is much like the front and rear legs, which work off a piston and 2 rotors. But let me not bore you with that, and instead let's pop into the interior of the ATTE. Again, this is something that I couldn't really replicate accurately on the actual ship. The main doors on the ship are supposed to flip down like this, and it's supposed to be used as almost a staircase or ramp to getting in the actual ship, but that was impossible too. I tried so many times to replicate everything exactly, but it just didn't turn out properly. So if I close up our piston doors there, and it's a bit crammed in here, so I'm going to switch over to spectator mode, and we're going to take a look at the interior of this walker. Now you can see we've got some seats in the middle for crew transport, of course, and we've got 2 seats on both sides. This one is also for crew transport, and this one, however, is supposed to be for the gunners of the sentry turrets that are on the front. So these seats are for the gunners. They've got their display panels and all their information. I included a programmable block so they could be hooked up to whatever they may want to be, and the spotlights are a bit overwhelming in here, but moving on to the secondary driver, you can see there is in fact a control station in here, and I've got a whole bunch of panels that are also not hooked up, but if they displayed information like the status of the armor and the turrets and all of that great stuff. So that's pretty much the interior. You can see I use these piston doors instead of doing a ramp system like the actual one had, just so I could save space. It's a little bit of a cheap kind of move. I could totally remove those. They're more of an afterthought, prevent people from sliding out of the hole here. Now we can switch those lights back off and pop down in the bottom. And you'll notice on the bottom here we've actually got 4 large thrusters. Yeah, 4 large thrusters. And the reason I had these was because of the weight issue I was talking about earlier. This test rig worked perfectly fine, but it also didn't really have much weight on it, so the rotors themselves didn't have to support much. On this, however, the rotors, these 3 rotors, or 2 rotors and a piston, have to support the entire mass of the ship, and that's just too much for it, and I'll show you how that walks in just a little bit. But I forgot one thing on the top is, of course, the cannon or turret, or whatever you'd like to call it. I think this came out actually pretty well. This looks fairly similar to the one on the actual ATTE, and it is nevertheless functional. If I press K while I'm in the seat here, I can access the turret controls, select control, and now I am in control of this. I included 2 buttons on the hotbar here. One increases the torque of the rotor, and the other one decreases, and you can see as I decrease it wants to dip around, and that allows me to move along the X and Y, or the Y axes, excuse me, and so I can aim up and down and fire however I may want. Now I did this because the gravity wants to pull it downward, so you can just lock it in place by increasing the torque a little bit. And yeah, that seems to work actually okay, so I'm happy with how that turned out as well. Now, on to the final part where you're gonna get to see this thing struggle to walk. So, I've hopped in the cockpit here, and if I press the 1 key to activate the timer, you can see this thing is gonna start tripping all over itself. And it looks like the rotors, I'll switch to spectator here. It looks like the rotors are collapsing under the weight. And it also looks like they're kind of tripping on the design of the wheels. Now I'll show you a clip of what this vehicle looks like in space with its walk cycle. It looks absolutely perfect. However, when you put it down on the planet with all the mass, like I was talking about, it just wants to trip all over itself, and it doesn't have any traction. And I have tried this off of the actual lake bed as well, so it's not the ice that's affecting it. And you may be asking that, or you may be wondering if these fatter, larger kind of feet are the cause of all that trouble, and they may be. However, the ones in the front, which are a little bit less bulky, seem to do the same thing as well. So overall, I thought it came out really, really well aesthetically, but it's not functional in any matter. However, this rig right here is extremely functional, and it leaves a lot of room to be improved on, because I can just start adding a lot to this. And since this has 4 legs as well, it's a lot more sturdy. Anyways, I'll be talking more about that in the future. If you guys like the video, be sure to like the video and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you'd like to try out this ship for yourself, go ahead and click the link in the description below, and that will take you to the Steam Workshop. You can subscribe to this, load it up in your world, and do whatever you may. I highly encourage you to mess around with this design, maybe even try to get it to work. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you next time.